Hello. So I want to talk about being stuck today because that is absolutely common for people. And I want you to know that you're not stuck because you're broken. You're stuck because you're trying to make chaos make sense. And if you keep waiting for this moment that everything just sort of clicks into place and everything makes perfect sense, you're going to be stuck in this loop for a long time. He's not confusing because he's deep or because this is love. It's confusing because this is deliberately meant to be confusing. I think what people miss a lot is that the confusion is intentional and the confusion drives you to stay and sort of be paralyzed to not make a decision, which ultimately keeps you in the cycle, which is the entire point. So it's like using math to fix a fire, right? That's not going to happen. It's not going to work. So let's talk about this kind of mind trap that keeps so many people just absolutely stuck in abusive relationships way long after you already know that it's not healthy. So, my name is Lisa Sunny. I am a coach who works mostly with women who are leaving abusive relationships and just healing trauma bonds. And honestly, I hear this every single day. If I could just understand why he did this, then I could move on. I need to understand why he's doing what he's doing, why he's doing this behavior, why he promises to change and then doesn't. And honestly, it's a logical thought. I honestly get it. But the truth is, this isn't a logical solution. It's emotional, it's psychological, and it's so deeply wired into your nervous system. So that's the part that we're not really getting that we really need to get. So if this resonates, I want you to hit subscribe because I go live regularly with the tools and the truth that I use to help my private coaching clients as well. So this is what keeps women stuck the longest. It's not actually the abuse itself. I feel like it's the need to understand it before they're allowed to leave. And I have a video earlier this week about needing proof, and you don't need proof, you need permission. You need your own permission to go. So I want to break that down today and just give you some really actionable steps to get out of this horrible loop. So let's talk about why this hurts so damn much, right? You fell in love, you believed, and then it got bad, it got different, it got weird. Moods started to shift and change, and they weren't the same person that you met. The person that you trusted ultimately starts to make you feel like you're the crazy one, and you don't get closure. You get blamed, which is infuriating because I always find that abusers almost sound like they're using logic because they're explaining to you why you're the problem and why they're just reacting to you. And you feel like you're just reacting to them, and then you can't tell who the abuser is, and you go down this rabbit hole and you end up watching a million YouTube videos and TikTok videos and reading books and all the things. And it's so confusing. So I want to help you find some clarity, as many of my clients do in talking with me as well. So when you are grieving the loss of this future that you imagined together, and more than imagined, than you planned together, that you talked about together, you're not just grieving the loss of a person or of a relationship, but it's like the hope and the potential and just everything that you've been planning, everything that you've been dreaming. And so it makes it really hard to move forward when you're still trying to figure out if this was real or if this was fake. When you still have so many questions, you don't have closure, how can you move forward? Now, you can, but it is challenging. And so maybe you're telling yourself, like, maybe I just misunderstood. Maybe I don't get it. Maybe this was me. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I caused these problems. And I feel like in those cases, you're still really holding on to that really amazing version of him, that best version of him, but it's the one from the beginning, not the version of him that he became, which in fairness is who he really is. They're not who they were in the beginning. What you're starting to see is true colors, not a change. It just feels different to you, so it feels like a change. But the trauma is not just what he's done to you, it's what it did to you on the inside. So you're constantly second guessing your memory, your reactions, your worth, and you miss someone that hurt you. And honestly, I don't know, for me that felt humiliating. And I hear that a lot with people. It's like, the embarrassment or the shame of loving someone, missing someone that has hurt you, because it really feels like your brain is betraying you. And I totally get that. You feel emotionally raw, you feel confused, you may hear some people talk about the fog. That's just that completely confusing thing that you're trying to get yourself out of. And the truth is, you don't feel like you can think straight. Some of that is cognitive dissonance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. But your body just feels so exhausted from this emotional roller coaster, but your mind is just going to keep spinning. So you trusted someone with your heart, with your story, with your children, perhaps. A lot of people share vulnerable things in these relationships only to have those very things be used against them as emotional weapons. Everything gets used against you, and you're not just hurt. I see people feel seriously erased in these relationships. You lose sight of who you are. And this is the trap, okay? You want to start making sense of all of this, why they've done it, how you, a smart, intelligent person, could ever find yourself in a relationship like this, because maybe you were taught to solve problems. And naturally you want to solve this problem. This person is telling you that the reason they're behaving this way is because of you, or because of childhood trauma, or because their mom was mean to them, or because they're insecure, or because something happened to them in their past, or because they just don't know how to love. And so you replay all of these conversations and you're looking for clues. You're trying to figure out what changed, and sort of pinpoint it, and hoping that if you understand his trauma or his childhood or his stress, or if he needs therapy or anger management or whatever, that it's all just going to click. But if you're searching for this right way of saying things so that they'll finally stop hurting you, you're going to wait forever. Narcissistic people, abusive people, toxic, manipulative, exploitative people, they put you in these no-win situations. It's either a double bind or a sadistic double bind, if you've ever heard that phrase before. There is no winning, and they know that. I want to be clear. They know that there's no winning in this conversation. And the truth is, it's not the best way to approach a healthy relationship anyway, of who gets to win. Someone who is narcissistic and abusive, they prioritize winning versus the health of the relationship and truly finding a compromise. So that's why you're never going to get them to stop hurting you, because the point is to hurt you. You're not getting hurt in the crossfire of what's happening. The point is to hurt you. That's confusing to people. And I get it, because who thinks like that? What kind of awful, cruel, evil, mean person does that? And unfortunately, this is a group of people who often behave that way. Abusive behavior doesn't actually come from misunderstandings. We wish it did. It actually comes from disregard. They don't care. They know that they're hurting you. They don't care that they're hurting you. I don't necessarily think they wake up like, ooh, I want to hurt you today, but they definitely don't care that you're being hurt. And that's pretty clear. This is oversimplified, but it's very clear that they know that they're hurting you, and they do it anyway by the fact that you said, you're hurting me, and they continue the behavior. They'll just gaslight, deny, minimize, and pretend it's not happening, or otherwise tell you that it's your fault that it's happening in order to get out of taking any accountability. And here you are looking for logic, but you're looking for that in manipulation, and it's not there. You'll never find it there. So the more you search for meaning, the more you're going to blame yourself for not finding it. And it was never your fault. So we talked about cognitive dissonance before, so let's kind of get into that, right? A lot of people don't quite understand cognitive dissonance, or maybe you've watched enough videos that you feel like you totally get it. But for those that don't, your brain is trying to hold two truths, but they're opposing. And so, like, he's good to me sometimes, and he's really cruel. So something you hear me say a lot is, he's the knife and the band-aid, the pain and the comfort. They become both things. And so this creates a loop, because you're in this internal war. And fundamentally, it's a dual reality, because you experience the good and you experience the bad, and you can't figure out which is real. So the kind moments give you hope, and then the cruel moments just destroy you, and you're trying to make sense of it all. But people will say, oh, you're lying to yourself, you just don't see it. You're not actually lying to yourself. You're actually trying to survive this kind of battlefield. The good and bad are all coming from the exact same person. And so your nervous system is going to stay on high alert. And maybe you tell yourself, he never hit me, or it's not that bad, or I made him angry. We rationalize, but the truth is it's your brain is actually searching for some kind of reason to justify the confusion. And so the dissonance keeps you stuck in shame, because now you're blaming yourself for not being able to figure this out, when almost no one can figure this out when they're in it. It's only obvious from the outside. When you're in it, the confusion is wild. But I want you to really focus on this part of it, that it is a designed confusion. That's not on accident, right? Abusers actually thrive in this kind of confusion. So it's not your failure, it's actually their strategy. And so you feel emotionally torn. Like one day you want to run, and the next day you're checking your phone for his name. The next day you know absolutely you need to leave the relationship. The next day you can't even imagine leaving this person. You feel like you're abandoning them. These are signs of a trauma bond, by the way. So you're going to start adapting your personality to keep the peace, even when it betrays your truth. And this isn't conscious. That's why people look into these relationships and they're like, girl, how do you not see this? You just don't when you're in it. And so my aim here is to help you see this better and really get it. So the inconsistency in these relationships, it starts to become your normal. And then you stop trusting your own kind of internal alarm system, and you tell yourself, it's not that bad. It's not that bad, because it's safer than saying, this is going to be the end of me. I've lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore. Maybe it's hard to leave. Don't we all know that? Maybe you have family, kids, religious reasons, money, love. There's so many reasons, fear, that we stay in these relationships. So staying often feels safer, because leaving also, there's a lot of unknown. And when you're filled with self-doubt, if you knew unequivocally the right thing to do is leave, period, full stop, you'd leave. It's because you don't know. It's because but then there's that little voice in the back of your head where you're not actually sure. And so a lot of my clients even say, like, I don't know if it's abuse. I don't know if it's a trauma bond. I don't know if it's bad enough. What's the difference between toxic and abusive? They really want to know that, because if you label it as abuse, you have to do something about it. Now you have to leave. Now you have to tell people that you were abused. And maybe you have feelings about what that means. But more specifically, there's an action that you now need to take. So it's too much. Our brains just try to protect ourselves. So logic is never going to be the thing that sets us free, because logic didn't bond you, right? It's love bombing did, hope did, loneliness did, fear did. You're not looking at a checklist. You're looking at someone who gave you what you needed most. Even if it wasn't actually real, it feels like they've given you something amazing. And when we look at the beginning of these relationships, like, oh, they start so amazingly, they just don't end that way. It's so twisted in the end. But abuse actually works by twisting reality and gaslighting your instincts. It has nothing to do with facts and reason. That's why smart, intelligent, ambitious, creative, loyal, conscientious, um, amazing people get stuck in these relationships, because it has nothing to do with intelligence. We wish it did. If it did, you wouldn't be here, because you know better. That's why no amount of Google searches or saved screenshots or memes or quotes of the day ever fully convince you to leave. Like, I've had clients with textbook proof, videos, phone records, screenshots, and they're still like, but maybe it was a bad day. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe it was a one off. Everybody makes mistakes sometimes, right? Because it's not really about what happened, it's about what you hoped that it meant. So healing doesn't come from knowing why he did it. I do think knowing a bit more about why can be helpful. In my view, in one of the early stages of coming out of these relationships, I call it education and clarity. What is a trauma bond? What is gaslighting? What is a dog whistle? What is Darvo? What are these terms? What's he doing to you? To really understand it. But that's just one small piece. And at some point, that's the piece that you need to let go, because the truth is that healing actually comes from finally believing that you didn't deserve this. Now that's hard. You keep searching for this like neat, perfect answer so that leaving feels justified, but there's no neatness in abuse. There's no clear answers. So you're trying to reason with someone who frankly benefits from you being confused. Remember that the confusion is by design. The good times exist to facilitate the bad. The only reason they're kind to you is so that you keep putting up with it. Call it love bombing, breadcrumbing, whatever. But frankly, someone who's clinically narcissistic, they're going through stages of idealization and devaluation. And we call it all these pop culture things. But fundamentally, yeah, you're getting little crumbs of love. You're getting little pockets of it. Some people aren't even getting that. And it becomes the absence of abuse is what starts to feel good when it isn't actually good, but you're starving at this point. The whole point is that you're confused. Now, your nervous system, not your mind, is actually what needs the most healing. And that's why so many smart, successful women stay, because intelligence isn't it. It's survival instincts and it's trauma wiring. So your pain does not need to be proven anymore. This is painful. We know, you know. You're allowed to leave even if no one else gets it, even if he doesn't get it, even if he blames you for leaving and says this is all your fault and you destroyed him and you destroyed your family and you destroyed the relationship and you've abandoned him just like everybody else. Whatever crap they're feeding you, that's not the case. You already know, and I want you to be able to give yourself that permission. Listen, you want to know where logic is useful? Math, science. This is grief, trauma, betrayal, and frankly, it's an identity crisis. And so your body knows what's going on before your brain does. And that only creates more confusion. But I get it. You feel probably paralyzed and stuck and overwhelmed. But here's the danger in waiting for proof. The big aha moment that we wait for this, the undeniable betrayal that you see, it often doesn't come. And the truth is, even if it does come, sometimes it's still not enough because you've been conditioned to accept more and more and more. By the time you get it, your self-worth might be so shattered that you're afraid to act on it. Because most abuse isn't actually these big moments, right? It's kind of a culmination of the daily erosion of you and all the small ways. Narcissistic abuse has been called death by 1,000 paper cuts. There's a reason for that, right? That's really much more profound than I think a lot of people realize. I once had a client tell me I was waiting for him to cheat so that I could leave, but the gaslighting and isolation was worse than his cheating. And I totally felt that. I was so sure that my own abuser would never cheat of all the things he did. And I was like, if he ever did that, that would be enough. And of course it wasn't enough because you get conditioned to accept it no matter how bad it gets. So I always feel like if you're looking for that smoking gun, I want you to kind of ask yourself, like, why do I need that? Right? What would it give me that I can't already give myself? Because every time you delay your exit and you're waiting for that confirmation, I'm telling you, you are giving more and more of your power away. And the most dangerous place is in this sort of waiting room of hope. A trauma bond and these abusive relationships thrive on hope. You're living on the potential of who they could be, who you thought they would be, on the hope that they'll change or go back to the person that you first fell in love with. But it's driven on hope. So hope is very dangerous in the context of an abusive relationship. This is emotional and this is confusing. And I recognize that you're being hurt by someone who also makes you feel really special. And obviously that messes with your attachment system, right? It's like you keep thinking that you're almost there, that if you just communicate better, that if you have one more talk, that it'll change, or that this time will be the time that he gets it. Maybe if you threaten to leave, then he'll really know what he's losing this time. And honestly, he's going to play hot and cold, love bomb, blame you, and all of these things. It all happens like in the same week or the same day. And again, this is confusion by design. It makes you question your instincts. It makes you override your boundaries. And it feels like a relationship. And I heard recently somebody commented this on one of my pages, like, don't call it an abusive relationship anymore because a relationship is reciprocal. And that's not what this is. And the truth is that person's right. This is not a relationship. This is a power imbalance. This is terrible. But in the midst of it, you're navigating all of this shame. Like, how did I end up here? How did I end up here? And that makes it even harder to reach out for help, especially when you don't know. I had a client this morning that was saying to me, I don't even know if I should be talking to you. Like, is this abuse? And so I do help people get the clarity to be able to see if they're happy truly or not, if this person can help. You don't have to work with a life coach or a relationship coach or a therapist or a professional when you've already decided to leave. Sometimes it's because you need the clarity, and that makes sense. This is deep emotional trauma. It's not a communication issue, and even in the way that you communicate with yourself, but it's also why couples counseling never works with this type, because communication is the foundation of couples work, right? We both need to communicate better. We both need to own our part. But in an abusive relationship, it does not take two to tango. In an abusive relationship, there is a perpetrator of abuse and there is a victim of abuse, and one person has the power and one person doesn't have the power. One person reacts badly to abuse. I don't know what reacting well is, leaving, I suppose, but that's not easy to see your way out of that. You might not behave perfectly. You've had moments, but it's not mutual abuse. You can be mutually toxic, but not when one person has the power and one person is being abusive. Abuse is defined as a pattern of more than two. So if there's circumstances of just constant, you're talking to the person, toxic people want to do better. Abusive people have no desire to do better. So, how do you find your way out of this? I want you to start validating your own reality. That's hard. Can you validate yourself? You don't need more evidence, you need more self trust. So, tell me how you feel after every interaction, because that's going to be the compass in this. Really looking at how you feel and like, where do you feel it? Feel your feelings, very like therapy talk, right? If someone makes you feel small or afraid or confused, belittled, that's your sign that this is abuse and you need to start finding your way out. Name the behaviors. This is why the education piece is so important. Is it gaslighting? Is it stonewalling, projection, triangulation? When you use the right words, it sort of breaks the spell, because now you're like, ooh, I see what this is. So I know one of my clients started using a log and like naming the behaviors. She was actually tracking how many times he did all these things. I think what's key too is how you felt when those things were happening. Like, you're angry for being gaslit. You feel confused, frustrated. Like, instead of angry, maybe it's betrayed or shattered, but like really use descriptive words to connect back to their behaviors and how you felt about their behaviors. You can build emotional safety, because the physical exit can be really hard and maybe you need a long-term strategy. Start building support. Start working with a qualified coach, start working with a therapist, you know, join an online group. I have a membership called the Toxic Free Relationship Club you can join. Find a guide. I also offer a program called the Trauma Bond Recovery Course, which is an affordable self-paced program that you can walk through on your own, but you can also work with me one-on-one. I have individual sessions, packages, you name it. But truthfully, the more emotionally resourced you are, the less reactive you're going to be. And they thrive on those emotional reactions. So I want you to take that away from them. Also, I want you to grieve the fantasy, right? You're not grieving the person. And you can do this when you're in the relationship or out of the relationship, but you feel like you're losing this person, but really what you're losing is the idea of this person. You're letting go of what you wanted him to be. The reality is that's not who they are anyway. And so mourning that dream is really painful, but it's really necessary. And then give yourself permission. So you don't need anybody else's permission, especially not theirs, okay? Because they're never going to give you permission. They're never going to see things your way. They're never going to be accountable. They're never going to admit it. You're not getting closure. This has to come from within. So you're allowed to leave because they're hurting you. You're allowed to leave because it's Thursday. Who cares? You're allowed to leave, right? Confusion does not mean you stay. But confusion is so paralyzing and we're trying to make sense of it. And we don't see confusion as the reason to leave. We see it as, I need to get clear first. I don't think you need to get clear first. I think you're much clearer than you think. I think exiting the confusion will make you more clear. I know I became more clear. I watched my clients become more clear doing that. And frankly, this is why I do this work. I don't think that my clients need more information necessarily. They need clarity and support and someone to sort of see through that fog with them. So I invite you to try to learn these things, and help yourself exit this. So if this resonated, please hit subscribe. And if you're ready to do this kind of work, you can reach out to me using the links in the description. I just want you to know that truly, like, you've waited long enough, right? Maybe now is the time to make the decision. And I know it's a hard one. I really know it's a hard one, but you can do this. You can do this. So I'm going to go through some of the comments now and just see what people have been saying. Harmony, thank you. I really needed this right now. I'm so glad. I'm always so glad that it reaches the exact people that need to hear this message, right? Um, I didn't deserve the horrible treatment, yet he claims it was because I was messy and not organized. Yeah, and that's what kind of that's not a reason to abuse someone or be awful to someone anyway, right? But yeah, they keep promising to change, apologies, and it happens again, apologies, and it happens again, or blaming you. I know I always get people comment like, "Ooh, you get apologies?" Not everybody gets apologies, but I promise you that the people that are getting apologies are also getting fake apologies. And all it's doing is stringing you along. So it's not better. It's not better that they're faking it. It's just a different tactic. And the truth is, an abuser will shift quite a bit in the relationship with you, changing their tactics, because as you get stronger and as you start to know more, they are going to be all over you with new tactics. I've always sort of considered it like a trap reset. That's the whole point. They want to reset because, oh, that used to work, but now it's not working. I need to try harder. That's why leaving is so hard. Everyone's like, oh, just leave, as if leaving makes the abuse stop. As if leaving makes the abuse stop. Post separation abuse is very challenging, but I still recommend for those that are able to try to get out, because you get a lot of space from it. And in a lot of cases, they do stop. They're not always post separation abuse forever and endless, whether you have kids or not. It's not always forever, but I do know that that's a real thing. Post separation abuse is challenging, to say the least. So leaving becomes really hard, but the message is that the confusion is the reason to leave. It's not the reason to stay. We want to get clear before we decide to leave. Sometimes you're going to get clear after you leave. And that's the risk. That's the fear of, like, okay, what if I get clear that I was the problem? What if I get clear that I lost a great person? You didn't lose a great person. They're abusive. We've established that, right? And abusers don't change. And we know that logically. We see that. It's been studied ad nauseum. We know that abusers don't change, but we hope that it's not abuse, that it's just trauma. And that's just not the case. Most people who are traumatized as children do not grow up to be abusers. 2/3 don't grow up to be toxic or abusive. So that's not what it's causing it. Abuse is a choice. Abuse is a mindset and a belief system, and they're going to continue to choose to abuse you until you choose to leave. So much harder than it sounds. I realize it's like, just choose to leave. There you go. Problem solved. I know how hard it is because I've done it and I watch clients do it. And I just know how difficult it is and how much work it takes and how much mental clarity and how you're exhausted. But leaving is what is necessary to save yourself. So for those that are able, focus on that. Now, I work with people helping them get out of abusive relationships, and I also work with people who are healing from abusive relationships and kind of rebuilding in the aftermath of it all. So hit subscribe if you're not already, and I look forward to seeing you again at my next live or my next video.